county, so we can try to get some more money to fulfill that match.
What would that grant do?
So what it would do, as you recall, our FEMA grant is composed of two different projects. One, what we called an assessment, but as we were kind of talking out in the hallway, it's more of an engineering evaluation of the like 12 to 15 residences that have had specific flooding issues, and the 5 or 6 stream crossings for county roads, both culvert and bridge crossings for the county. So in order to determine what we're going to do with either those resident structures or stream crossings, we've got to put some engineering into it to determine, is this bridge too narrow? From the assessment that was done by the Conservation District, it looks like some of them are. And so we've got to determine through a hydraulic analysis and hydrology, how wide does that need to be so that it's not going to cause an issue. And I think there's just more of the same on that as far as what's causing the flooding issues recently to either those structures or what's causing issues at the crossings, so that we can alleviate some of those problems and make it so that nobody's getting flooded out, and we're not going to have sinkholes in our roads when we're having flooding conditions go on, as we've had in the past. So that would be the stage one. Once we have that engineering evaluation done, then we can move to the construction side of things for implementation. As far as do we flood-proof a house? Is there a way we can raise it up? Is there a way we can, build some sort of a dike that'll protect them? Which is a levee, which is a little bit more tricky, but it can be done. It can be engineered and certified. And then what can we do with the crossings, and what do we need to do with those as far as replacement? Some of the culvert crossings, I think it's pretty obvious that we need to make those into bridges. And, just so they're not a problem for washing out, and they're not causing both upstream and downstream flooding concerns for residents. So that's a synopsis of really what needs to be done. But again, that would help us. That funding does qualify as matching funds because it's state funded. So we can use that for basically all of phase one or a part of phase one, part of, basically there's enough there to do, if they fund it, to provide all the match for phase one, plus, probably another half of those funds would be available again for the construction side of the match. Or we, however you guys would like to handle that, we can certainly do it, but.
The flooding up Deep Creek
Yes.
a couple of weeks ago, tell me about that.
I've just gotten hit and miss information on that, so I can't tell you exactly what was going on, but I have to get with probably Brenda and figure out exactly what was going on there, and I'd be happy to. I just heard about that here recently, so I haven't had a chance to contact her yet and figure that out. But obviously that was during that large rainstorm event. Really not a big surprise. We got a significant amount of rainfall in a very short amount of time. And of course, we do have some areas up in the forest especially that are not as protected as they used to be, and we're getting more runoff. So I would say that's probably the synopsis you'll hear, but I need to look into that a little bit more.
I think you're probably right.
And wasn't that some of the discussion from the early on meetings?
Yes.
The Toston Modlo fire is really part of the source, if not the source, for so much of this flooding that's happened.
It is a very large consideration. I think, at least now we're getting some vegetation back in there. I think maybe a little more time will cure that, but it definitely doesn't have the undergrowth and the tree intake that it had before. And so yes, the runoff is higher for that area that got burned. Just kind of an unfortunate part of Mother Nature's
Yeah,
plan.
that's right. I agree with that. It's gonna be restored back.
Yeah, I
What's
mean,
it been out, 10 years now?
yeah,
something?
I mean, it's gonna come
heal
back.
itself.
It will, eventually, there's no question, it's just hard when you get a big fire like that, it burns a large area because it's unprotected for a long period of time, so it causes all kinds of havoc in the downstream system.
And that's what we're dealing with, is so much silt now.
Yeah, we
Which
definitely
raise
got
the-
sedimentation issues, you know, we've got irrigation issues and, you know, stream crossings that are too small, and, you know, we've seen where people have actually taken culverts out and put bridges in, that have helped significantly, and, you know, I think we'll be looking at all those things as far as an evaluation to make sure that what we're doing is the right thing for the stream. And again, you know, we were just talking on the hall, I mean, Ron and Justin and NRCS and the Conservation District have been doing a good job of working on that. And so, you know, pretty much what we're gonna do is gonna make sure to dovetail in with what they're doing. Hopefully, you know, as long as you guys concur with that, but I anticipate we're gonna be working hand in hand along the way if this funding comes in place. So,
I would think that the crossings are probably the biggest concern.
they're definitely a big concern, I agree with you there. You know, some of them are just too narrow and, you know, some of the pipes are too small. And that's just something we're gonna have to tackle and see if we can get them better. Get more capacity through there so they're not causing a flooding issue.
Did you say early in the conversation that you need a letter from us?
I don't think I do, I guess need you guys to authorize, what I've tentatively done is set up Nicole as the county contact for this, because it does have to be a county employee, who applies for the grant. It's an electronic, process. And, I'll write the grant, give her all the information, all she's gotta do is hit the deliver button, essentially. So, again, no guarantee, just trying to see if we can come up with that 25% match. Make it as painless on the county and its residents as possible, so,
That would be good.
yeah.
Would it be helpful to start up some of those meetings again so that we all know what the different pieces are doing?
I
in
think,
this?
I think so, I kinda like to, you know, get dovetailed in a little bit more of that. I anticipate, you know, like I said before, DES has approved this, ranked it third highest on their list for Montana. So I gotta think that FEMA's actually going to approve this thing at some point. And so yeah, as soon as we can get those meetings back started, I think the better off we're gonna be.
And we do have Mike Conkey as the temporary interim DES coordinator.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good.
Tim?
Madam Chair, Tim Ravendall, I attended a DES training meeting in Lewistown this last week, and one of the discussions was mingling or commingling of different grants to make soft matches and hard matches, and that was one of the main points that they wanted to bring up. I understand this is a DNRC state
Mm-hmm.
grant, which would fall into a different mean. I just want to make sure that I point out that whether it's a state or a federal grant, it's tax dollars of the citizens, and that we need to be very careful. And then I'd just like to close that Broadwater County has already spent a substantial amount of funding through the DES program here in Broadwater County on Deep Creek, looking at these same things. I hope we're not recreating the wheel and starting over, because these studies have already been done
There's
to
a
a
lot-
large extent.
Yeah, there's a lot that's actually been done out there, and that's all gonna be basically wrapped into the starting point from where we go forward. Right now, it's like, there's been a lot of studies done, now we need to figure out exactly what we're gonna do. And, like I say, we'll work concurrently with everybody that's already, been going on this project, there's a lot of stuff that's in play, and,
Is that correct also that there's $400,000 matching for the total cost of that project
it's approximately that amount as it's been proposed.
as it's been proposed?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Board members, anything?
Well, that's
not anymore, no.
information on it. And like I said, there's a $400,000 matching grant, that's, it's gonna be thought about a lot.
Yes.
So I'd say, you know, it's fine to get the information and so we could go from there, but we gotta do a lot of thinking on it, I think.
Well, again, I think the goal is, you know, at least if we can get the FEMA grant funding in place, doesn't mean you guys have to use it. And if we can get some other grant sources or other money to, as a match, we can do at least some of it.
Like the crossings.
Yeah, we could at least do some of it. So I think it's, you know, when it boils down to it, I understand that $400,000 match is gonna be difficult. You know, I'll continue to work hard to see whatever we can come up with and rocks we can turn over to help find money for that. In the end, it's really gonna be your decision as far as what you wanna get done with that. And I think it's just, you know, sit down and prioritize and make sure you're hitting the most critical areas first.
Well, I agree with Franklin. I would say go ahead with the FEMA grant on the watershed, DNRC grant, I guess.
Sure.
Because, you know, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. We need to know what needs to be done, and if that's got no match to it, and we can use it to match the construction grant, it seems like a real good idea to me, and it needs to be done. There were people that were personally affected by that flooding, and
Absolutely.
that is our charge.
Sure.
One last point, Madam
The
Chair.
watershed's the part that's healing itself.
Right. Right.
One last point, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Don't forget, when we played God with White's Creek and spent millions of dollars of manipulating that, Mother Nature came in and undone all the work.
Ron?
I had another point to make, but since Tim mentioned that White's Gulch is working perfectly, actually, and that fishery is, there's 1,000 fish there when there used to be 120, but, so it has worked pretty well, and it cost $400,000. But the point I was gonna make earlier was, we have a landowner advisory group that has been directing Fish, Wellington Parks, NRCS, and the Conservation District, and we applied for grant money through the 319 Clean Water Act grant, and actually last Friday, we were in front of them to present that grant, and so we're using a match that, you know, might normally be potentially available to Sean, but we're using it for the Clean Water Act grant. And what we've always thought was the cleanest way to handle this was when it was infrastructure related, that was the most likely place for Sean's services to occur. And so, if in the near future, if Sean could come to that landowner group, and maybe you've got 10 projects you'd like to do, but have them help you prioritize which ones you might be able to move forward, or in their eyes were the most important, then those landowners kind of get to own that process, so. You know, I expect they'll probably get to, it's not like they've been disbanded, we just try not to bother them too often, but I think in early to mid-September, we'll be meeting with them, because they have to approve our watershed restoration plan that we're working on right now, so maybe Sean could wrap into that in September. Does that work time-wise?
Yeah, just let me know.
And for them to weigh in on priorities, I think would be a good thing.
That's a win-win.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Other comments? Sean,
Okay.
wanna wrap it up?
That's, you've heard my spiel, so I'm just looking for authorization to proceed on the grant.
Please do.
Okay?
I'm wondering, do you want that in the way of a vote, so you have the minutes?
Sure.
All right.
Whatever's the best for you guys.
Well, Franklin was the first to say go ahead.
Give the authorization to go ahead and proceed on it, and get us the information.
I'll second the motion.
Okay?
It's moved and seconded.
All right.
Did we give Sean authorization to go ahead and proceed on this and bring back information regarding flooding? Broadwater County. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Good enough,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
And thank you too for coming, Justin and Mr. Spear.
Anything else for the good of the order?
I have one little thing I wanna bring up. And, it's just basically a clarification. It's something we've been dealing with a very long time. It was brought up at our last meeting a couple of times before, and I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. This has to do with that Second Amendment ordinance and then the resolution that we worked on. It's been on the agenda every week since the beginning of the year for 15 minutes, almost every single week. We had a working meeting for several hours to put together a resolution that just said basically we support the Second Amendment. That was a good working meeting. It didn't happen. The commission did come up with a resolution, just stating that we support the Second Amendment, and that's it. Now it's been requested that this subject be on the ongoing agenda, week by week, just in the items of discussion, review, and action, so that we can act on it at any time. Several citizens are now asking, well, if we put on the second, what about the first, third, fourth, etc.? Now we're looking at spending more taxpayers' money, which we've heard today several times is an issue. Legal ads, we have to pay for, and we have to pay for the space we use. Well, if our agenda goes from 3/4 of a page to much more than that, we are now using taxpayer dollars to put more into advertising these items for discussion. The next thing is we've been asked to host, pay for advertising, bring our employees along to take minutes to a public meeting or a public hearing on this particular resolution that was brought to us by a citizen, Tim Ravendall. And again, now we're talking about spending taxpayer money to advertise and overtime for our employees. We're also putting our name on this resolution that we of course have a different resolution for, which says somehow that we agree with this resolution that's been brought to us. And that's fine if it's a good resolution that's for the good of the county. Now, we're on record as a commission, and I believe as individuals, in supporting the Second Amendment. That's not the issue here. In fact, I don't believe this has much to do with the Second Amendment in reading the words on the page. Just starting with the ordinance that we have been asked to support, carry forward, and then vote on. Some of the things that it says here is we the commissioners would impose on Broadwater County Sheriff, health officers, and designated state law enforcement officials to enforce provisions of this ordinance. We would also insist
Madam
that
Chair,
those...
point of order.
No, I'm going to finish, but thank you very much. This would also require that any persons listed in this section who are witnesses, any public servant, elected or appointed, agent or official, or employee of any local, state, federal government, dealer, etc., who's violating this Firearms Protection Act. We don't have the legal authorization to create an act in Broadwater County, is authorized to arrest and detain offenders. Another point is any public servant, elected or employee of the local, state, government, federal, who enforces or attempts to enforce any act, etc., shall be guilty of. And then we're actually creating law and penalty in Broadwater County. A misdemeanor will be subject to imprisonment, not more than 30 days, a fine will be leveled, etc., etc. But also in this, it says, it shall be a violation of this ordinance, which is also this act, for any public servant, elected, appointed, etc., to enforce any law, statute, rule or regulation of the United States government or any government of the state of Montana relating to a personal firearm. And it goes on to say, all state laws pertaining to gun control are hereby voided within the established borders of Broadwater County. The resolution actually tones down this language somewhat into one page. And it makes statements like, it is invalid in Broadwater County to not recognize, therefore be it resolved, the Broadwater County Board of Commissioners declare any federal act, law, order, executive order, rule, regulation passed by Congress or signed by the President regarding firearms to be invalid in Broadwater County, shall not be recognized by Broadwater County, is specifically rejected in Broadwater County, and shall be considered null and void and of no effect in Broadwater County. And then at the bottom it says, we support the sheriff of Broadwater County to take all measures as may be necessary to prevent the enforcement of any federal acts, laws, orders, executive orders, rules, regulations, etc., etc. We cannot, in my opinion, put this on our agenda. We cannot host a public meeting in which we say we commissioners approve this, support this, put our name on it, for a lot of reasons. One is, this is an extreme violation of our oath of office. If we want to be impeached, this is a good way to do it. This was brought to us months ago, and it was declared that half of the counties were looking at this. And then that number went down to 17, and then to 12, and then at the working meeting, it was said to us that 5 counties are signing it. You said, what counties? And the answer was, well, they're not really signing it, but they're looking at it. It's down to 1. Broadwater County is the only county that is continuing to take this seriously. The other point with this that I want to make is, I said before, it says it's a Second Amendment resolution. It actually says Second Amendment Preservation Act. Again, we don't have the legal authority to create an act. But also, along with that, the biggest piece of this to me is, in the ordinance, it mentions the Second Amendment twice. It mentions that Broadwater County will be separate of the state of Montana and separate of the federal government in a variety of ways 14 times. It was said in the working meeting that this was a foundation, something to build upon. My question is, a foundation of what? When you look at some of this language, it parallels with language from the early 1860s in which the 13 Confederate states drafted their ordinance of secession. I cannot, as a commissioner, continue to put this on the agenda and continue to take these documents seriously, because it looks to me, from the words on the page, that this is a lot more of a secession document than it is a Second Amendment document. That's all I have to say.
I think that was all completely done away with. That one meeting, we talked about just a small, simple thing.
That was my point of order, Madam Chair.
Yeah, this has all been
I
done
read
away
from
with.
the resolution we've been talking about.
No.
Yes, I did.
You wrote that one small one, and I think Tim put another small one, just a kind of a half a page type thing. This here was completely done away with as far as,
It was the start. It's what led to that resolution.
well, that was,
And that
that come out, but that was,
resolution maintained the same
but that was
language.
done away with, all
No.
that lengthy stuff there.
You can't say that because that's inaccurate.
Why is it inaccurate?
Because the same language transferred in the resolution, it was the starting point, it was the foundation that led to that resolution.
It might have been a starting point, but that was wiped out. Remember the very first thing I said, we all support the Second Amendment, let's have something short and simple. And that's what we did. And there was people in the audience here that time too, and that was, I haven't heard about this part here for, this is completely wiped out. Is that right, Elaine?
I'm not sure.
I think you were here when, maybe you weren't here
I
when,
wasn't there.
when this was pretty much decided that no way that was gonna, we're not gonna have that much. It was gonna be just short, simple thing. Basically, we support the Second Amendment.
Have you read the resolution presented to us last week or 2 weeks ago?
There wasn't, the only thing I have, I had that at one time, yeah, and we all did. But the last one that, well, you and Tim put one in there at the same time. They're pretty much identical, real
No, they're
short.
not.
and
In fact, the one presented to us that I read from today misquotes the Second Amendment.
that.
So I guess my question stands, have you read it?
Well, I know I've read everything come in, but I've never had anything.
Madam Chair, I think it's really important to come back to the reality of this whole situation. Number one, Madam Chair, you were at the working meeting when we sat down and we discussed the original draft resolution, which was 7 pages. And as an alternative to have the discussion, not an alternative, as an option for the discussion at the working meeting that was on our agenda and talked about, was the ordinance, because there was concern about having the ability for separation of powers for this body to tell the sheriff what she could or could not do. The resolution was there, the ordinance was there, 2 separate animals. We, as a working group representing the citizens of Broadwater County, said no, the ordinance does not go where we want to go because that does cause that problem. So if you remember, Madam Chair, I took the ordinance and I turned it upside down and I said, we'd be done with that now. We move forward with a resolution. If Madam Obert will bring out the one she was just reading from, you will see on it, it says draft right across the front of it. It was a draft document at the time. It still is referenced as a draft document. I'm talking about the one you just pushed back in your door, Madam.
That's
You
the
just
one
read
we were
off of
given,
the ordinance, and
Tim.
I'm not here to argue, but
This
I
is
want
the
to make a
ordinance.
point,
And it does
draft.
say draft, it's
Draft.
the ordinance.
And it was tabled at our working meeting, Madam Chair. And so what I'm trying to point out is, we're not taking extra time by having this on the items for discussion. Now we are, and the reason is because we have graciously put this on the table because of your absence, Madam Chair, so that you could be here. And if you remember correctly, the outcome of the working meeting, the last time this was officially discussed, other than in passing, was when we decided to do a short version of this, to bring it for a public hearing so that you folks, as our elected officials, could hear testimony in a public hearing setting and then vote accordingly. It's not outside the venue of the commission meetings here in Broadwater County. It's part of the process, affording the people to bring forward issues of concern. The Second Amendment is issue of concern. Now, there's differences in opinion on how that's worded. There is nothing to say that there can't be an amendment to any document presented for consideration. There never has been. This has never been shoved down the throat of anyone saying my way or the highway. Madam Chair, I respectfully request that we continue on to Plan A, which is when your ability to be here past the budget, the last time we talked about this was to table this, allowing time for budget. Now we're here because it's brought up again. I respectfully request we stay with Plan A, bring this forward for a hearing during normal meeting hours, not a special meeting, so that we can have an official record, and you folks can then decide whether you want to vote up or down. To have these sidebar debates is a waste of time, Madam Chair. We need to do this in a professional manner, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Donnie?
Tim, Mr. Ravenel, I've only got one thing to say on this situation, and that is, we do believe in the Second Amendment. We do believe in what it states. A situation came about here 2 or 3 years ago on marijuana. The people in the state of Montana voted for marijuana, legalizing medical marijuana. Okay, what did the government do? The government went overhead, and they'll do the same thing if we do anything here in Broadwater County. The government is gonna wipe out whatever's done here. Because the Constitution, I believe, says enough. The Second Amendment says enough. Another situation is, we look at the Constitution, how many times has it been overridden illegally by our president? It has, many times. So our government, our federal government, if there's something established here in Broadwater County, it's gonna mean nothing when they go for it. The only thing that's gonna mean something is the fact that they're gonna have to take the gun out of our bloody hand.
Madam Chair, and just thank you, Don, I think you nailed it. I mean, what's coming from the federal government is very egregious. It has been, and it will continue to be so. And the Second Amendment is clearly been violated in multiple cases. That is the purpose of the hearing, so that those points like Don just made can be brought to the table, they can be discussed in a formal setting so that everybody understands exactly what is what, instead of what's been going on. Madam Chair, I respectfully again ask that we continue forward when it's at your convenience as chair. Please schedule a hearing. We'll be done with this once and for all, up or down, please. And that's all I'm asking for is a fair, open hearing and a fair debate and a vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
John?
My question was, you know, what's being said, Don and Tim both said, the Second Amendment is, without any exception, the total defender of constitutional right, number one. Now, that is with a fact, and the federal government right now, which is playing a whole different law, there's two different sets of laws. Federal law and constitutional law isn't even on the same side of the planet. Now, taking this in consideration, just what Laura says, there's the question of the oath of office, and it is. And you must protect it, or you get wasted with it. So, the fact, by organizing this thing with this motion that Tim's got up, for you to recognize it, bringing all of the executive, judicial branches of government in our county to a table and making a common agreement that we'll stand together or we'll hang alone. I'm done.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Madam Chairman, my name is Hugh Van Swearingen. I've spoken several times on this issue. I think it's goofy. I think it has nothing whatever to do with the county business, nothing to do with operating this county whatsoever. There's no place here. And I think if you want to do that, I can come in here and I would like you to adopt a resolution proclaiming your support for freedom of the press and freedom of religion. Start with that number one. Go on to number 3, number 4. You want to do that?
Fine.
Don?
I believe, just kind of in closing from what I'm gonna say, when it comes time to buck the government, prepare to die. Cause it's gonna happen, cause they're gonna go right over our heads no matter what you put in writing here. And I believe it's a waste of time, just the same as you do, Laura. Because we do accept the Second Amendment for what it is, but we have people in our government that's got more power than we have that'll say what it's actually gonna be when it comes time. And we're liable to see it closer than what we think.
Alan?
I think, Madam Chair, that in some respects and different opinions that are expressed, that, like Laura said, you know, the oath of office, I think, speaks for itself at this time. That first and utmost, to defend the United States Constitution, all other laws come underneath it. And so, maybe there's a possibility here that people don't even really understand what this procedure even is. And so by having confusion, maybe it just creates a rhetoric to where if you allow people to get together with sound information, express their opinions, and I believe like what Tim said, then it would be up or down vote, move on. Instead of just shutting the door without having public input, due process of what can be allowed through this commission. And the Second Amendment probably is the most important amendment of the Constitution, because it defends the Constitution. The Constitution, if you ever read it and understand it, that is the defender of the Constitution when government goes back off, if you want to believe in a form of government. So I think that it would be beneficial, and let's just see what the public says.
Bravo.
I mean, that's what it's all about, right? You're here to serve the public.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to close. I just cannot understand why anyone would think it's a waste of time to fight for the Constitution, regardless of whether it's the Article 1, Section 1, on up through the 10 amendments. Second Amendment is under attack. Everybody agrees with that. I think it's incumbent upon us citizens to take a stand, and that's what this is about. Taking a stand as citizens and defending our Constitution. And I, as an oath keeper, truly believe that that is my duty as a citizen. And so do other people. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Tim. John?
I've got a question. Let's hear from you commissioners what you think about how we really should stand for the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States in respect to the overruling by federal law. This is constitutional we're talking about. Here's the other side is federal. Now, what is your opinion
Say
of
that
how we...
again, please.
Say again?
Ask the question again, please.
How do you express yourself in respect to the Second Amendment constitutionally and federally? The violations that this conversation's all about. And there will be. It's happening now. They're trying to remove it. Some of the states are even overriding the constitutional right to bear arms altogether. So, and we seem to be a little different because we've made a stand. We've got a good standing in state statutory law, which is extraordinary as far as I'm concerned, to uphold the Second Amendment. I want to hear from each one of you commissioners how you feel we should do this in a manner that coordinates our efforts in this county.
I guess I would have to do some more research, John, and do more reading.
Well, that would be perfect. Also, do you agree that we should have a public meeting for let the people express their opinions to you and get these answers from you back to us?
Well, let me just say this. I want to talk to the people out there before we ever call for a public meeting. I'm getting lots of phone calls,
Mm-hmm.
and so I would like to hear from more people of what they want.
Mm-hmm. This has been going on for a long time.
Yep.
And I'm for certain that's not a bad idea. But isn't it time to start this problem on the big boys end is closing down on us like a train wreck, if you will put it that. Mr. Bacchus seems to like to use them words. We had one train wreck, are we going to have another?
Hopefully not.
Okay. Mr.
Yeah.
Slifka, do you have any comment?
Like I said to start with, I'm for the Second Amendment, 1,000%, if I say 1,000.
That's good.
I've been always hunted, trapped, law enforcement. I mean, I'm completely for it. Always have been, always will be.
It's the ultimate backup of the sheriff's department.
Well,
The Second Amendment, through the militias and through the good people that will stand with the
I get-
local
and I'm like
government.
most people, I get pretty concerned when they're gonna take away some stuff. I remember, this was a few years ago, something on the Remington, something on the Remington shotgun, that was gonna be illegal. Just little things like that they were gonna try to do at one time, it was gun.
Who is
Right.
they? You keep saying
Okay.
they, and that's,
Well, I guess you call it
be a little more
ones-
specific.
the ones that are trying to take the guns away and stuff.
Who is that? No, not just they,
Okay.
that's not good enough.
You know, I don't know what they were called, really. I guess I can't say for sure. But you've heard that too, you know, they're gonna, just because something was in there. That's why I'm completely for the Second Amendment. I think everybody in here is. Aren't you for it?
Well, certainly.
Yeah.
Well, the only reason we're free men today is because of the Second Amendment. No other reason. Not our rights, it's just the ability to defend it.
More.
Just two last comments. One is, I stated this 2 weeks ago, this commission was asked to write a letter of support for the Rod and Gun Club. I wrote that letter in support of that club, the Second Amendment, and that letter was quoted in reading by the Rod and Gun Club to get the grant. My last comment is, this is from Tim's resolution. It does not say draft anywhere on here. It is entitled the Second Amendment Preservation Act. And now therefore be it resolved, the Broadwater County Board of Commissioners declare any federal act, law, order, executive order, rule, or regulation passed by Congress and/or signed by the President on or after January 1st, 2013 regarding firearms that is a violation or infringement of the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States and/or Article 2, Section 12 of the Constitution of Montana is invalid in Broadwater County, shall not be recognized by Broadwater County, is specifically rejected by Broadwater County, and shall be considered null and void and of no effect in Broadwater County. Again, this is Tim's resolution from the working meeting we had that he referenced, and it does not say draft. Anyone is more than willing to take a look at this resolution.
Laura, why didn't you do that while he was still here instead of waiting until he goes out the door? Is that your whole plan of
I
doing
did
things?
do this while he was here, and he said, that's not my resolution, and my resolution says draft.
Well, I think you ought to know
wanted to correct the
best.
record.
He wrote it,
Yes, he did, and I just read from it.
but you didn't present it while he was here defending. You
Yes, I
keep
did.
telling me you
I
can't do
read that
something. if you-
twice.
Huh?
I read that twice, once while Tim was here, and he said that I didn't have it, and once while.
Well, that should have been enough.
It should have been, you're right.
Alan,
I think as far as that issue, I think Tim made it very clear last time it was brought in front of you to have to sit down and have a discussion, to go through it, pick through it. I guess, you could be, depends on how petty you wanna be as far as, or what your agenda is, by not saying draft on it. We all know this is all part of the process. That's what the meeting was to be able to create a dialogue, digest, tear it apart, rip it up, add to, take away from. And actually, by the way, you read it, from my personal opinion, again, it gets right back to what I said before. If I think that this should be put in front of the people. One time, here you are, if the people speak, you make a vote, voila. Decision is made, that way we know what the commissioners feel, where our commissioners stand on our rights. That's all.
thank you.
We just wanna know where the commissioners stand.
Anybody else? With that, I'll adjourn the
Wait,
meeting.
wait, I got one more question. I think.
John, you had 15
Oh,
more
no,
questions.
I like to talk. We got 2 out of 3 commissioners in here that agrees something should happen with a public meeting. Only one that resists it, and that's the
No,
2.
that's not quite true. I didn't say yes to a public meeting.
Well,
I
you
said I
sure
want to
fooled
talk to
me.
the public.
You fooled me with the way you responded to it.
No, I said, and you know that, I want to talk to the public. I'm getting
Oh,
phone
yeah,
calls.
you said that, but you've also said that there should be something completed. And we
With
need
that,
to
we're
complete.
adjourned.
And what happened?
Yeah.
Hey, Dawn?
Confused them when I come in.
No, I've already been through it.
Like, now I gotta go home and absorb all this.
Do you have
So did I hear this right? Did I hear that right? Some things. It's all subject to change next week. Some things just don't make sense.
Laura?
Sit and think about it.
Turn this.
Oh, thank you very much, Al.